Welcome to Before You Vote. I'm Mike Broomhead. This CW7 special program is here to help you, the voter, understand the 2024 primary election. We'll be talking with candidates and data analysts to give you insight into who and what is on the ballot. Today, we're talking about the Maricopa County Attorney's race. Now, the county attorney prosecutes the cases across the state. They ask for bond at the beginning, they try the cases, and of course, they ask for sentencing after a conviction. Today, we're talking with Republican candidate Gina Godbehere and Republican candidate Rachel Mitchell. Plus, we're taking a look at the polling data from Emerson College. Find out how the presidential race is shaping up in the battleground states. We'll be back here in exactly 60 seconds on Before You Vote. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back to Before You Vote. One of the biggest offices, because it's one of the biggest counties in the country, is the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. Joining us is Republican candidate Gina Godbehere. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to talk about the job of the county attorney because we talk about the relationship between law enforcement and prosecutors. Can you lay out the job of the county attorney?
The county attorney's job is one of the most important in our community because you have one person who's going to determine whether felonies are filed for the entire county. That's 4.6 million people. And if the county attorney chooses not to file felonies, the cities cannot do so, which is one of the main concerns because currently my opponent is downgrading felonies and sending them to cities where they are left with filing misdemeanors, and most cities do not have supervised probation, so these individuals are in our community unmonitored.
So when you look at the priorities of the office, because you've got to balance staffing and timeframes and severity and all the other things that go with any job, what are the priorities of that office if you take over that office?
It has to be protecting this community, filing the dangerous crimes, stopping the lenient plea deals that are coming out of that county attorney's office, from the Charles Ryan plea to actually protecting victims. Victims have lost their voice currently in our criminal justice system. So I want to revamp and return the balance to give victims a voice, and I want to stop the dangerous diversion policies that I look forward to, hopefully on your show, talking more about that are currently in place at the county attorney's office.
Down that road, we've seen a lot of talk about things like the crime tourism that has happened and the retail theft, organized retail theft. So where does the balance of the time in your office of prosecuting those cases and making sure that there are heavier sentences versus making deals to get more people in the courtroom?
You know, what's concerning is we talk a lot about retail theft, but it's only like 1% of the cases. What about the other 98%? And there's so many victims that are in tragedies that we're hearing about every single week, from the officer who was stabbed in the neck because this defendant was given probation over and over again, from allowing people who have addiction and drug problems to go back into the community without treatment, and then we're shocked when they commit more violent crimes. We have real issues that need to be solved, and our priority has to be on stopping this revolving door of justice, stop downgrading all these felonies and sending them to the city, and stopping the expansion of these liberal diversion policies that are currently in place in these blue cities like San Francisco or New York. I hate to tell you, but they're here now. I wish it wasn't true, but that's the reason I'm stepping in this race, because we have gone soft on crime in Maricopa County, and it's happened under my opponent's watch.
So you believe that it's more policy driven than say staffing issues?
Staffing is always a concern. However, you also have to fix the retention. Currently, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office continues to bleed talent. They can't keep people there because there is a bad work culture. So that absolutely has to be addressed. But it doesn't help when you are continuing to plead out cases in the middle of trial, violent cases, that we have policies in place that were written by not only the county attorney. When you talk about the Charles Ryan case, you have the county attorney who went against her own written policies her prosecutors are forced to follow and give a probation plea for somebody who points a gun at a police officer and do no agreements, probation, actually stiff probation, no jail. And now her attorneys are forced to be able to justify those decisions every day in court, which does not help with your morale issue.
How important is the relationship between law enforcement, that trust relationship between law enforcement and the county attorney's office? Do you believe there's a strong relationship now? And if not, how do you make it stronger?
It's imperative that we have to have that strong relationship. And currently there is not the communication there needs to be. When you have liberal policies, these policies embolden defendants, they demoralize law enforcement, they lead to lawlessness like in those blue cities, and they lead to victims, more importantly, not getting the justice they deserve. And so all of that interplays, and we do not have what we need to, and we have to rebuild that in the county attorney's office.
So how do you rebuild it? What is it going to take to make sure that there is a strong relationship, that when the cops make cases, that the prosecutors are going to as vigorously prosecute them?
We have to have the communication. We used to have that in community-based prosecution. I spent 25 years in the county attorney's office, and we had a thing called community-based prosecution where we worked hand in hand with law enforcement and the communities. We need to return to that. That has ended. That is not in place, and that will be one of my priorities when I become the county attorney.
All right, so prioritizing and looking at what the biggest issues facing that office. What is the number one issue facing the office right now in your mind?
The number one issue facing this community, we have to get rid of these liberal diversion policies that are expanding under my opponent's watch. And for your listeners to hear about it, please, I'm going to outline and put a copy of these diversion policies on my website. I'm also going to be outlining every single case where there was a miscarriage of justice. We need to get through that. We need to start reprioritizing law and order and enforcing the law and making sure victims have a voice. Those are going to be my priorities going forward. And it will also be connecting with those attorneys there and making sure that they understand they will get the support they need from me as we go forward to really protect this community.
The third leg of the stool is a judiciary that puts and gives the sentences. Do you believe we have a strong judiciary that when the cases are proven that they will level or levy big sentences?
I mean, the trouble that people need to understand is the one that has the most power in our criminal justice system is the prosecutor. So in the Charles Ryan case, the presumptive prison plea by law was 10.5 years flat. You had a county attorney who didn't go with the presumptive, not even a non-dangerous, but then turned around and gave probation with no jail. When the county attorney is dismissing allegations of priors, not enforcing people who are on probation and allowing them to be reinstated over and over, you can't blame the judges. That is in the power of the prosecutor, and that revolving door has to end. That's why I'm running for office, because as a victims' rights attorney, I'm seeing these lenient pleas every single day, and it has to stop.
I really appreciate the time, and I can see your passion for the office, and I wish you well, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you, and I invite everybody, please go to Gina for Justice, learn more about me, my cause. I'm a fourth-generation Native, and I'm here to restore accountability in Maricopa County so I can protect the community. Thank you.
We'll be back on Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Let's recap one of the bigger news stories and take a look at some polling here this week. Abortion is still a big issue in Arizona, and this week, the Arizona Senate voted to repeal the 1864 or the 1977 law, whichever way you look at it. Two Republican senators, Shauna Bollock and T.J. Shope, crossed over and voted with the entire Democratic delegation in the Senate to repeal that law. So what's going to happen now is the governor signs it, and we go back to the 2022 law that was signed by Governor Ducey with the 15-week limitation and the restrictions that come with it. But it's not necessarily the end of this, because as we know, there is a referendum that's going to make its way to the ballot that is going to be much less stringent in that regard, and it's called the Arizona for Abortion Access, and we'll see that on the ballot. Will the Republicans come up with another referendum so there'll be two choices in November is still one of the things that people are looking at. So the abortion issue is not over, but it has taken a step forward. Let's look at polling from Emerson College. Let's start with the presidential race from Emerson College. when you look at a three-way race between Donald Trump, between Joe Biden, and RFK Jr., it looks as if here in the state of Arizona, Donald Trump is holding on to a bit of a lead, 44-40, but that includes that third-party candidate who's polling between 6 and 9%. Now, people believe that once you start seeing the fighting between the parties, you're going to see RFK numbers drop down. Nobody really thinks that he's going to win the race necessarily, but he certainly can be a spoiler. It just depends on who he's going to be a spoiler for, which of the candidates. Let's take a look at the Senate race, because that Senate race is narrowing. When you look at Kari Lake as the Republican nominee, there's still a primary there, but she seems to be the leading candidate. She is narrowing the gap with Ruben Gallego. Ruben Gallego is the lone Democrat. That lead right now has Ruben Gallego at 45%, but Kari Lake at 43%. Now that lead has been narrowing, or that gap has been narrowing, and it looks as if he is holding strong. Ruben Gallego is holding strong in his position, but Kari Lake is winning over, it looks like, some of the independent voters. Now, whether that stays that way, we're going to see a lot of change back and forth in the coming days. But right now, that's a snapshot of where we are in polling. So thanks for watching us here on Before You Vote. We're going to keep you informed, as I said, all election season. Now, coming up, I sit down with Republican candidate Rachel Mitchell, find out what her plans are for the office if she gets reelected. This is Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Continue our conversations with candidates for the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, the current County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
As the incumbent, you've been doing this now for a while. Let's talk about the job itself. What are the most important aspects in your mind of that job?
Wow. Well, when I took over, I inherited really quite a few problems. We had a significant backlog. We had a deficit of personnel. And so that was the first thing that I had to address, to make sure that we were up at, the numbers that we needed to do our job. Those numbers went up. We did recruitment. I think we've really improved the reputation of our office within the community. And then the backlogs, we have really taken significant chunks out of or completely eliminated altogether. So that was the initial thing. And then we move forward. And of course, that has to do with current crime trends.
So what are some of those trends? What are some of the things you're seeing now that are the top of the page for your office?
Well, one of the things that affects just every type of crime was we were seeing a tendency to lower bail from what we had seen in the past, either letting the person out on their own recognizance or setting such a low bail that they would get out. And as you know, we have a deficit of police officers out there. And so these police officers are arresting somebody. They're taking the time in their shift to do that, coming back the next day. And if there's not an appropriate bail set, there's the person doing the same thing again, same place. And so that was one of the things we wanted to address. So we are staffing the initial appearance court where bail is set 24 hours a day, but we're also making recommendations that are higher. I think there had been a lulling into a sense of, well, we're not going to get a very high bond, so we're going to ask for what we think we can get. And we've reversed course on that. And I've said, you ask for what's appropriate. And we've been getting higher and higher bonds so that people who are violent criminals, people who are repetitive criminals, they're staying in.
Now let's talk about challenges, because looking forward to the election, if reelected or elected to this office, what is it that you think the challenges moving forward are?
I think the criminal trends always are morphing to some degree. We have certainly seen an influx of organized retail crime like we've never seen before. And, when you watch the other cities that have handled it with very liberal policies and very lenient kind of sentences, you see what happens. It happens more. People don't take the law seriously. And I made it very clear here, we're going to enforce the law. And in fact, I've said several times in my press conferences, if you come here from another state to commit those types of crimes, plan to stay. We're going to ask for bail, and we're going to ask for prison or jail time. And people seem shocked when they get their initial appearance and bail is being set. But just last week, we indicted 2 or 3 women who cumulatively had stolen $500,000 worth of merchandise and were essentially running stores out of their homes reselling this merchandise. And this cannot go on, because small businesses and even large corporations that have small businesses, footprint businesses, aren't going to be able to sustain that.
There have been some high-profile things happening. You just mentioned one, the retail theft. There's also been the crime tourism trend that we've seen, and then the East Valley violence and the death of Preston Lord and other attacks. How important is public information out of your office to the community on what you are doing? Is that an important aspect of the job?
That was very important to us, was to manage that to the best of our ability. It was a little bit difficult because, as you know now, we had been running an investigative grand jury, which you can't talk about when one is happening. But one thing that we were very careful to do is to have regular communication with Preston Lord's parents, to let them know we are working on this. We are going hard at this. This is very important. And as you know, we ended up not only indicting 7 people for the first-degree murder of Preston Lord, but we charged in 20 other cases, not related to the homicide per se, but related to the violence that we're seeing in the East Valley.
So let's talk about what you've learned being in the office. Was there anything that surprised you about the office, and what do you think you've learned in your time there that may help you if you get elected moving forward?
I think it's very important to, obviously, the nuts and bolts of the job I've done. I've been a prosecutor for 32 years, and most of that has been in a supervisory capacity and also handling very high-profile cases. But the importance of managing the communications to the community is something that it's a skill set that you do learn as you're on the job. And so we've been working very hard to make sure, to the degree possible, that we inform the public of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
The relationship and the rapport with law enforcement, as you said before, officers working cases. Do you believe there is a good relationship and rapport with the agencies across Maricopa County and your prosecutors?
180-degree difference. The very first day that I took office, I was actually approached by a police chief saying, "Can I call you directly now?" Because that had not been happening. I was shocked to learn that. Now, honestly, not a day goes by that I'm not talking to at least one of the police chiefs in the Valley, and I'm having regular meetings with them. I'm having regular meetings with other leadership within police departments. And as you know, I've gotten endorsements of the APA, PLE, FOP, the Phoenix Police Sergeants and Lieutenants Association. So they're seeing the results. In fact, I did an interview with a group the other day who said, "You've done everything you said you would."
Is staffing still an issue for you, or do you feel like you have improved that to the point where you feel comfortable?
Staffing will always be an issue in a government office, because you're never going to reach 100%, but I feel comfortable that we have the people to do the job that we need to do. I did approach the Board of Supervisors this year for an increase in personnel. It's the first time that's happened for prosecutors in 5 years, and we were given an increase in personnel. So they've been very supportive of our efforts.
Well, I appreciate the time. We're interviewing candidates about their unique perspective on the job, so we appreciate your time today.
All right, thank you very much.
Rachel Mitchell, the county attorney and candidate for re-election. We'll be back. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Thank you to Maricopa County Attorney candidates Gina Godbehere and Rachel Mitchell. Next week, we're talking with some of the candidates for Maricopa County Sheriff. Thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you again next Sunday right here on Before You Vote.